radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. And boy, do I mean chaos this week. This is episode 127, recorded on Friday, July 5th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, a wedding for one of our hosts and a funeral for our country.
Yeah, you are now officially Mr. Joe.
I am. I got the ring to prove it. And guess what? I went to the courthouse today and I got the official paperwork and license, and we are all good for tax purposes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That was probably the one good thing.
Yeah, enough good news.
So let's get to the headlines.
I got along with him well. Although he did announce the other day that he'd much rather see Biden as president. And I agree with him. I agree.
First up in headlines...
Doom!
Yes, doom indeed. The Supreme Court came out with two decisions this week, both anointing presidents as kings and destroying federal regulation.
And we should also clarify, there were other
Right, there are
that
other
we could have also
rulings.
talked about. We don't have time. And we're not a legal podcast to really dive into all this. So if you want like that type of stuff, do like Legal Eagle on YouTube, Strict Scrutiny, Opening Arguments, all those others that will like do all that for you. But we're going to talk about two of them today.
Right.
Because that's enough.
First, the Chevron deference doctrine has been overturned, undermining all federal regulation.
Yep. And you may have heard about this, I don't know how many times from liberals and Democrats when the three conservative justices were being appointed.
And they have been ignoring the Chevron doctrine for some time now.
Yes.
In the Roberts Court, and stripping as much regulation as they could, including a lot of EPA power.
Correct. And I believe we talked about that even one of their recent decisions as well.
So this decision effectively ends a legal precedent known as Chevron deference, named after the gas company Chevron, after a 1984 Supreme Court ruling. That decision held that when Congress passes a law that lacks specificity, courts must give wide leeway to decisions made by the federal agencies charged with implementing that law. The theory was that scientists, economists, and other specialists at the agencies have more expertise than judges in determining regulations, and that the executive branch is also more accountable to voters.
but that would be stupid to have something like that, like transparency and checks on the government.
And since that ruling, thousands of cases involving challenges to regulations have relied on the Chevron doctrine, and many bills were crafted in Congress with Chevron in mind, leaving language vague and relying on federal agencies to determine how best to uphold those directives. Those bills are now basically toothless.
Yeah, they have nothing to stand on anymore, and a lot of that precedent is now just completely thrown out the window, and no one knows where to go next.
This is the largest win for government deregulation than I can ever remember.
I mean, yeah. The only thing I can think of to be that comparable, God, that'd probably be like the crazy stuff that happened like in the 40s, I'd say. Like that just like gave all power to corporations for everything.
This will, of course, lead to thousands of lawsuits from corporations looking to rid themselves of costly regulations like air and water pollution, food and drug safety, worker protections, Medicare and Medicaid compliance, financial regulations. Anyone remember the 2008 mortgage crisis that nearly bankrupted our country? And much more. So every major federal regulator is now under basically a ticking time bomb, just waiting for when that lawsuit is going to come and seeing how judges will react to what those regulations actually mean.
But at least, Jason, we have very strict and coherent lobbying laws in this country,
Right.
as well as campaign funding laws in this country that would never lead to any type of corruption or dark money, right? Please. Please.
Sure. No, I'm sorry. It also greatly expands the role of the courts in interpreting legislation instead of deferring to experts in the relevant fields to know, for instance, how much sulfur dioxide emitted by a coal power plant is safe for us to breathe.
And this just drives me nuts because this is where the court has been going for the last, we'll say, decade now.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember back with Obergefell, which was the same-sex marriage ruling, and Republicans and conservatives were losing their minds talking about how they were way out of their scope as judges and justices, talking about stuff that did not pertain to them. And here we are, where we're going to completely broaden that idea to literally every single subject there is.
Right.
And it's because you know our Constitution pretty well. Therefore, you're an expert in, I don't know, let's say chemistry.
Right. Biology, economics.
Like, what drives me nuts is, and we talked about this coming from like the skeptic and the atheist movement back. What was it? It was the Dover something decision, which was the intelligent design court case. Do you remember that from back in like, I think it was like the 90s or 2000s? And even then, you had the creationists and intelligent design advocates talking about how a court shouldn't determine scientific fact. Well, here we are, and this is exactly what we're doing then too. So what are we even trying to accomplish at this point by having courts go so far out of their scope that now all scientific facts have to go through our Supreme Court to make sure that they are actually justified? And we even know for a fact a bunch of those justices are not going to come to the correct conclusions intentionally based on how they've been bought off.
Right. I mean, we have to rely on Congress, who,
great,
we know, take direct bribes from corporate lobbyists. And on the whole, they're not trained scientists. We've got Ron Johnson and Tommy Tuberville in the Senate.
Talking about how climate change is just fine.
Marjorie Taylor Greene in the House. That's who is going to have to try to craft legislation and somehow pass it with specific language and foresight to anticipate any future changes or need for federal agency regulation. Or we rely on unelected judges who are unaccountable to the people to interpret what's best for the public.
Jesus Christ. This is bad.
It's so much worse than I think what we could even express in this segment. It is the wet dream of every corporate deregulation lobbyist.
Yep.
This is their holy grail. It completely neuters federal regulations. Say goodbye to clean air and water. Say goodbye to safe food and drug supply. Everything is just up for grabs now. If you have the money, you can exploit it, and then you would also have the money to be able to insulate yourself from the consequences.
Well, and I think even just trickling down further from that, or if you want to talk about the domino effect of that too, it just furthers the death of expertise in this country. We do not care about expertise in this country anymore. Not one bit. And that horrifies me. And also what scares me is that this was the case that was overshadowed by an even worse decision. So the fact that people didn't even hear about this case scares the crap out of me.
And why was it overshadowed? Because the Monday after this Friday decision, the Supreme Court ruled that presidents are now completely immune from criminal prosecution for official acts obliterating one of the fundamental principles of our government, the check on executive power. Fuck that Constitution.
Yeah. So how was your July 4th?
Made and ate Japanese and Thai food, trying to decide which I might like more for no reason whatsoever.
You know what's actually really funny is that I also went to go get sushi that day. Where do we begin, man? Again, I know we're not legal experts, and I know we're not the greatest people to talk about this with, but like, I am legit terrified at this point. I don't know how we even come back from this. I have seen numerous legal scholars basically crap their pants at this decision, where I think those same legal scholars were like, okay, yeah, but they're not going to actually do it, right? Yeah, they did it, and they didn't care.
So this ruling comes from an appeal made by Donald Trump in his motion to dismiss multiple charges against him for attempting to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election, arguing that a president should have absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for acts committed while in office.
Which is already insane.
Yeah. As we said, most sane people believed that just the act of taking up this wildly unconstitutional case was his hand-picked court delivering a win for Donald Trump.
Yep, absolutely.
Because it delayed the stolen documents case and the election interference case until after the election, when Trump would win and could presumably put a stop to any Department of Justice cases. And as we said, I don't think anyone, even the most conservative legal pundit, was expecting this absolutely irresponsible and undemocratic 6-3 ruling that, yes, indeed, American presidents are kings, and they do enjoy complete and total immunity for official acts as president without giving any guidance as to what that might even mean.
And to say how insane this is, and I'll get to some quotes in the dissents later on. I was listening to an analysis by another legal expert where they were saying, okay, so the big example that everyone does, even Sotomayor, talked about was, okay, you can send SEAL Team 6 to go assassinate your political rival. That's the big one, right? You can go do that.
It's an official act. You're the commander-in-chief. It's totally in line with the core powers of the president.
And watching the scholar wrap his head around this decision, saying, okay, so hear me out. Here we go. If a president makes the order to assassinate a rival, which is illegal, he would be immune because that is considered an official act because he controls the military as a core responsibility as president. However, if that Navy SEAL actually assassinates the guy, he could go to jail because that's still illegal.
But the president could then pardon him and it'd be done.
But yes, but even then, man, like that's where I'm losing my mind. It's because
I think no one is responsible anymore. So
I know that, but I'm saying the idea that we have the guy could still go to jail for following the president's order.
Much like when your lawyer makes illegal payments on your behalf to a porn star to keep her silent about the fact that she had an affair with a presidential candidate, and then your lawyer goes to prison, but you don't. So we're already past that.
I hate this.
I do have a quote from the majority opinion. In dividing official from unofficial conduct, courts may not inquire into the president's motives. Such a highly intrusive inquiry would risk exposing even the most obvious instances of official conduct to judicial examination on the mere allegation of improper purpose. Nor may courts deem an action unofficial merely because it allegedly violates a generally applicable law.
Say that one sentence again, because that is bonkers.
Nor may courts deem an action unofficial merely because it allegedly violates a generally applicable law. Otherwise, presidents would be subject to trial on every allegation that an action was unlawful, depriving immunity of its intended effect.
So even the idea that the president could have done something illegal,
you can't even examine it in a court.
Correct. We now have a literal king.
Yes.
In the White House.
Oh, but it's okay. Joe Biden said that he won't abuse the power.
And that... I'm not mad at Joe Biden for this.
I would have killed all 6 conservatives on the Supreme Court and Donald Trump and all of Donald Trump's family already.
And they
would all be dead.
And this is what makes me also so angry because they are so freaking dishonest.
And I would have pardoned everyone who did it. We'd all have a nice laugh and a beer. We'd appoint some more Supreme Court justices. If Mitch McConnell tried to get in the way, he'd be out too. Turtle soup for that guy. And then we would change the law afterwards.
Right.
And, it all would be good in the world again.
But here's why I'm so upset about this. Because
Jason, 2024.
Here's why I'm so upset about this, because if you want to know another reason why the Republicans and conservatives are completely full of it, the fact that they are not screaming and terrified right now of this decision exposes their entire hand. Because like Jason just said, Joe Biden is currently the president who is the current king of the United States. And if I was a Republican who thinks Joe Biden is this radical crazy person who has been killing people secretly through vaccines or whatever he's been doing, I would be trembling with fear because now I know this guy can kill us all at any moment and it wouldn't matter. And the fact that instead of being fearful of this decision, they are cheering and applauding it just shows they actually do not care at all about what this decision actually is. They do not care or think that Joe Biden could be any type of radical dictator because they're not worried about that happening. All they wanted was to get Donald Trump off the hook. And if you read the decision, which we will include in the show notes, so do the conservative justices on this court.
Well, I would actually disagree with you. So if all they wanted to do was get Donald Trump off the hook, they would have done what we said, just send it back to the lower courts for clarification. It would have no chance of going to trial by the election. You're fine. The fact is, these Federalist Society justices, which is what all of the conservative justices on the Supreme Court are trying to do whatever they can to try to push the 2025 project, to try to set it up so that, yes, the president can indeed completely change the government of the United States to favor the conservative worldview. That's what this is. And let's listen to a quote recently given in an interview from the Heritage Foundation president, the author of the 2025 project, and hear what he has to say.
In spite of all this nonsense from the left, we are going to win. We're in the process of taking this country back. We are in the process of the Second American Revolution, which will remain bloodless if the left allows it to be.
A bloodless coup, a second American Revolution that will remain bloodless as long as those on the left allow it to be. That is a threat.
Yeah. And okay, I'm going to even agree with you. You are correct. It wasn't just to get Donald Trump off the hook. It's to also push the insane agenda to go along with it as well. So I am perfectly okay with saying that and conceding that. What I was trying to get at, though, is you can clearly tell the focus of this was just to get their side to win, whether it's for getting their guy off the hook or for giving them more power. Even in the decision itself, they go into great detail about how Trump should get off the hook, but then they never go into any detail about how presidents could face actual prosecution because they don't care. It doesn't matter to them. They wrote it in such a way where they
they're going to be, again...
Right, they're going to be the ones in charge, so it doesn't matter.
Right, and they're going to be the arbiters.
Right, exactly.
If you make it vague enough, it's going to have to always go to the court.
Yep.
And then they're ultimately going to be the ones to decide.
Correct.
And they've shown at this point that they're a corrupt, biased institution that is there specifically to serve the purview of these conservative organizations like the Heritage Foundation, like the Federalist Society. And that's what they're going to do. They don't care what the Constitution says, because this is clearly the most unconstitutional Supreme Court decision since slavery.
I don't know, man.
I mean, the first thing you learn in any civics class or U.S. government class is
checks and balances.
And this removes the checks and balances from the executive branch. It clearly, this originalist idea can go fuck itself now.
100%. 100 freaking percent.
There is no way any of the founders of our country, anyone who set up the government the way it is, would agree with this decision. And there is no way you can spin it to try to say that they would, because it's absolutely ridiculous.
And like I said, we're not legal experts in any kind here. Go check out other ones. Legal Eagle actually does a very good breakdown on YouTube for it. Highly recommend it. But I just want to read a couple of things from the dissent from Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sotomayor, who actually penned the full dissent. But let's start with Ketanji Brown Jackson. In a footnote, trying to wrap her head around this insane logic, this is what she had to say about it. To fully appreciate the oddity of making the criminal immunity determination turn on the character of the president's responsibilities, consider what the majority says is one of the president's, quote, conclusive and preclusive prerogatives, the president's power to remove those who wield executive power on his behalf. While the president may have the authority to decide to remove the attorney general, for example, the question here is whether the president has the option to remove the attorney general, say, by poisoning him to death. Put another way, the issue here is not whether the president has exclusive removal power, but whether a generally applicable criminal law prohibiting murder can restrict how the president exercises that authority. And that's the wild logic with this. Because firing and removing your own staff is considered an official act, you can just kill them if they refuse to step aside or do what you want to do, and you will be immune as president. I'm thinking back to all of the former President Trump staffers that refused to go along with it.
Mm-hmm. The overturn, like Mike Pence, when he refused to try to overturn the results of the election.
He could have literally hung Mike Pence.
Yes.
That would have been a now legal thing for him to do.
Yes.
And I just want to finish this with a quote from Justice Sotomayor's dissent. The court effectively creates a law-free zone around the president, upsetting the status quo that has existed since the founding. Again, like Jason said, originalism just sucks. Doesn't even matter anymore. She continues. This new official acts immunity, quote, lies lies about like a loaded weapon for any president that wishes to place his own interests, his own political survival, or his own financial gain above the interests of the nation. The President of the United States is the most powerful person in the country and possibly the world. When he uses his official powers in any way under the majority's reasoning, he will now be insulated from criminal prosecution. Orders the Navy's SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival? Immune. Organizes a military coup to hold on to power? Immune. Takes a bribe in exchange for a pardon? Immune, 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 immune.
I like how she gives examples that we know Trump has actually done.
Right. In every use of official power, the president is now a king above the law. And then she signed it with fear for our democracy, I dissent, which I don't think has ever been signed before in a dissent in our U.S. history.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do in this situation.
I mean,
I can
can't let Trump win.
opine that you may be immune from criminal prosecution, but you're not immune from the guillotine. That's about the only thing I can really say. That's the only power left for the people, right?
I mean, our institutions are literally crumbling before our very eyes.
Worked pretty well in France.
I mean, it's so scary, man. I don't even know.
There is no precedent for this.
No, not at all. And this is not even one of those things where, and we keep talking about this all the time, well, maybe there was actually a good legal reason you just don't understand because you're just not legal guys and what. No, there's not. Again, I'm not a legal expert. I've read, watched, and listened to a bunch of them just to make sure they're just as confused.
Well, in case you're wondering, I was going to skip this, but maybe we'll play it. In case you're wondering, maybe this was always what these justices thought. Maybe this is like a pretty standard thing. Yeah, the president should be above the law. He is the executive after all. We've got some clips. 3 of these justices have been asked this specific question. 3 who signed on to the majority opinion. So we'll start with Chief Justice John Roberts.
Senator, I believe that no one is above the law under our system, and that includes the president. The president is fully bound by the law, the Constitution, and statutes.
Not anymore, he's not.
Nope.
Thanks to John Roberts' court.
Yep. If anybody ever sees John Roberts, ever,
Punch him in the dick.
well, hang on. Never let this guy get away, ever, with having the worst Supreme Court in U.S. history. And if not the worst, man, it's a contender for like a very close second.
Well, I mean, yeah, there were some rulings that said that certain people aren't actual, like, human beings. Those might be worse, but I mean, so at least in the last 100 years.
Sure, that's fine. This has got to be one of the worst Supreme Courts of all time, hands down. And don't let anybody ever tell you any different. And let that be John Roberts' legacy until the day he freaking dies.
Tomorrow.
Well, hey.
Well, let's hear what Samuel Alito had to say about that same question.
I don't think the president is above the law. No person in this country, no matter how high or powerful, is above the law. It has been a particular honor for me to serve on the Court of Appeals for these past 15 years because it has given me the opportunity to use whatever talent I have to serve my country by upholding the rule of law. And there is nothing that is more important for our republic than the rule of law. No person in this country, no matter how high or powerful, is above the law, and no person in this country is beneath the law.
To be fair to Samuel Alito, that was before that bastard put up a pride flag on the other side of the lagoon and pissed off his wife. Now we have a king. And how about I Love Beer
With Tobin and Squee.
Brett Kavanaugh, who, I mean, as we know, lied multiple times during his confirmation hearing. Let's add one more.
The president is subject to the laws. No one's above the law in the United States, including the President of the United States. And that's something that is made clear in Federalist 69. Even in the national security context, where the Constitution gives the commander-in-chief power to the president remains subject to the law. A president is not above the law with respect to the criminal process. No one is above the law in our constitutional system. Federalist 69, Hamilton makes clear all the ways that the executive branch, as designed by the framers of the Constitution, was different from the monarchy.
I'll throw all that crap out the window because Brett Kavanaugh just signed on to the ruling that completely reverses what he just said.
And one of my favorite parts about that, I didn't even hear that quote or that clip in advance, so I'm so happy you said that. He kept saying Federalist number 69.
Nice.
Yeah. I think it's even funnier that he uses that specifically, because what they do in this opinion is actually cite or quote mine Federalist Papers number 70, the one literally right after it, completely conflicting with number 69. So the fact that he even says and cites Federalist Paper number 69 as a way of saying the president is no longer above the law, and then immediately uses the next one right after that, or at least a sentence from the next one right after that, to base their entire argument on, is laughable.
Well, and he literally put in the same context, even when exercising his power as commander-in-chief, he's not immune to the criminal process, which this ruling 100% goes against and says, you know what? He is completely immune.
Yep.
And on other things that may be outside of that purview, he has presumptive immunity, which is why you can't even examine whether or not what he was doing was an official act in a court, which is like, I don't know how more you can say the president is above the law, except for how they did in this rule. It's the only thing I can hope is that it does not stand for long, because it doesn't matter who the president is. No one should have this power. No one was granted this power from the start of our country.
Yep.
This is insane. I cannot believe we're even in this position.
And I hate to even use this term to describe, because I hate the word so much, but like you just said, it goes literally against the founding of our country. I cannot imagine a more un-American decision. Oh my God, okay, I'm losing my mind. Because Jason, even the slavery decisions at the time
yeah,
were more American than this decision. Oh, I'm even angrier now. It's so bad. This is so bad. And if this is any reason for you to get your friends and your family to go vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Or
whoever.
We'll talk about that later.
We'll get into it.
Because now that
anyone who is the nominee for the Democratic Party,
yep,
you need to vote for that person. The only person that is capable of beating Donald Trump. Yes, I know. Robert Kennedy, who we're going to talk about in a second, and everybody else, they have no shot. They have 0% chance. There are two people that are going to win. The nominee from the Republican Party, who is insane, and we know will abuse that power. He tried everything he could to abuse his power when he was president the first time, and now he's got all the power in the world to abuse. It's going to be a dystopian nightmare.
Yep.
Or the Democratic nominee, be that the corpse of Joe Biden or whoever. We at least know that they will be responsible and not abuse this power, and hopefully be able to appoint enough justices to the Supreme Court to overturn this horrible un-American decision.
You know what I was going to talk about this week, Jason? How angry I was that Louisiana passed a law that said the 10 Commandments has to be in schools.
It doesn't even matter anymore. Who cares?
It's just like, that was supposed to be the thing that was going to outrage us, Jason.
So we will finally move on.
Talk about RFK Jr.
And we'll talk about RFK Jr., who continues to be a lying scumbag.
Oh, how so? Please tell.
On Tuesday, Vanity Fair published an article on the troubled past of presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. One of the biggest headlines from that article was due to a picture that Kennedy had sent a friend last year when that friend was traveling through Asia. I guess the entire continent, it's not specific. The image is of Kennedy and an unidentified female companion pantomiming eating a grilled animal, along with a recommendation to, quote, visit the best dog restaurant in Seoul.
Oh, cool.
So, racism aside,
yeah,
Kennedy says the picture was a goat that he ate while in Patagonia. But honestly, I don't care about that picture. I don't care whether or not he ate a dog. Maybe if I was the governor of South Dakota, I would care. But I'm not, and I don't. People do, in fact, eat dog in some parts of the world. Whatever. It's not, I do not care. The part of the article I want to address is
when he shot the dog.
Took it down to the gravel pit. Is the part of the article they talk about when Kennedy and his wife at the time, Mary Richardson, hired an in-home nanny. Yeah, he's one of us. He's one of the common people. An aspiring environmental activist, Eliza Cooney, who was 23 at the time, and Kennedy was 44. If you remember, in his previous life, Robert Kennedy was actually a successful environmental activist who started the River Keepers to try to keep our water clean.
Yep.
Cooney said that Kennedy touched her leg inappropriately under the table during a meeting that was held in their home, that she woke up one night to find a shirtless Kennedy in her room reading her diary. He then asked her to rub lotion on his back, which she did reluctantly.
What the hell?
And a few months later, Cooney said that she was rifling through the kitchen pantry for lunch after a yoga class, still in her sports bra and leggings, when Kennedy came up behind her, locked her inside the room, and began groping her, putting his hands on her hips and sliding them up along her rib cage and breasts. Quote, "My back was to the door of the pantry, and he came up behind me. I was frozen, shocked."
Jesus Christ.
They were interrupted by a worker who walked in and said something to the effect of, "Don't do anything that you might regret. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do." She doesn't remember exactly what he said, but that's what
The
stopped.
typical type of threat, you know?
Yeah, this type of interaction. Who knows how far, this would have gone otherwise. She was very distraught after this. She never followed up with being an environmental activist. This put her off of, that field. And this is something that we've heard time and time and time and time again by women in most fields, where they're struggling to get into a field. They find a mentor who then takes advantage of their relationship, and that scars them for life and basically puts them out of their dream. And it's despicable and it's terrible. So what does Robert Kennedy say about these disgusting, disturbing allegations? During an interview with the Indian Dave Rubin, Sagar Enjeti, who I cannot stand, Kennedy was asked about the dog picture and the sexual assault in this bit of hard-hitting journalism that we're going to take a listen to.
All right. Last question for you, sir, because I know that you're running on a short time. Vanity Fair came out with a major profile today. I want to give you a chance to respond to this. There's a photo circulating, I believe, of you posing with what looks like a dog, and also a barbecued dog. I'm not going to show the picture as a dog lover. I know you have pets yourself, and also a sexual assault allegation from one of your former nannies. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yeah. Sorry. The article is a lot of garbage. The picture that they said is of me eating a dog. It's actually me eating a goat in Patagonia on a whitewater trip many years ago on the Fulaifu River. They say there's an expert. They have an expert that has identified that as a dog carcass.
Yeah.
It's just not true. So, and in terms of the other allegations, I've said this from the beginning. I am not a church boy. I am not running like that. I had a very, very rambunctious youth. I said in my announcement speech that I have so many skeletons in my closet that if they could all vote, I could run for king of the world. Mm-hmm. So, this Vanity Fair is recycling 30-year-old stories, and I'm not, going to comment on the details of any of them, but I am who I am.
You're talking there about the nanny situation. I mean, I do have to ask, sir. I mean, are you denying it or not?
I'm not going to comment on it.
All right. Well, I gave you the opportunity, and officially, it's a goat. I didn't know necessarily about what did they say? It's a spare rib of a canine. I think that's what they said for their identification. But we've got it from you. I'll let the anatomy experts be the ones who can determine that, sir. I very much appreciate you joining us for these questions. It's been a big interview for us, and we wish to see you on all 50 ballots and including on the debate stage, because that's what the American people deserve. So thank you.
I'm going to say bad words that you're going to have to bleep if I say how I feel.
How'd you like that bootlicking?
So you're not going to comment on the
Sexual assault? No comment. I am what I am.
Okay.
What are you, Popeye?
Well, we're gonna say it's officially a goat now.
Thanks for your time, sir.
Thanks for your time. I hope you get in all the 50 states.
Your boots taste very nice tonight, sir.
Jesus Christ, man.
You just admitted to sexual assault on my show. Let me laugh with you and tell you how great it was to have you here, you absolute piece of shit.
Also, I just wanted to include this as well because, of course, this happened. This is a real tweet that I saw from today, July 5th, that says, from RFK Jr., that says, quote, "My take on 9/11." It's hard to tell what is a conspiracy theory and what isn't, but conspiracy theories flourish when the government routinely lies to the public. As president, I won't take sides on 9/11 or any of the other debates. What I can promise is that I will open the files and usher in a new era of transparency.
You don't want to do the voice?
No. I won't take sides, but I
See, and I don't feel bad for making fun of his disability now. At all.
Jesus. But so there you go. Third place presidential candidate, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is
sexual abuser, dog eater,
who doesn't deny the sexual assault, apparently.
But does deny eating a dog.
You're right.
That's more important.
And also, the most important issues of our day, refuses to take sides on 9/11. The sides of that.
It's hard to tell what's a conspiracy theory and what isn't. No, it's not.
It really is not, man.
I mean, for Robert Kennedy, yes. I guarantee it's very hard. You know, the worm ate that part of his brain that could tell the difference.
Okay, this is actually a really, I'm kind of sad I just thought about this now. Does he think the government killed his uncle?
Probably. I think so. He also does not believe that Sirhan killed his father, even though there's, people were right there and there's, video.
Well, then he'd have to be a JFK truther.
Yeah, I assume so.
Good Lord. Get this man out of here, man.
I don't know, other than his vice president funding his campaign. I have no idea why anyone takes this man seriously.
I'm right there with you. Well, of course, I'm right there with you on the idea that I can't believe people take Trump seriously. So, Are you feeling patriotic yet, everybody? Happy July 4th!
So, did we have any good news this week that we can pass along?
I got married. I had a good time.
The election in the UK seemed to go really well.
Yeah, Labor killed it.
Yeah, the Conservative Party took it real hard.
In Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court approved the ballot drop boxes. So
that's a positive.
That's some good stuff. We didn't talk about Steve Bannon going to jail.
Yeah.
He went to prison.
That was quickly overshadowed.
Yeah. I feel like we're just delaying the inevitable of trying to talk about this debate.
And no Foxed in the Head this week. So we are going to move to our main topic.
The debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
It's the debate that America didn't want, but we deserved.
No one deserved that. So
this is what they play for you at Gitmo.
The disaster that was the first Biden and Trump 24 debate, and hopefully the last. What are my thoughts? Unfortunately, Joe Biden did the one thing that he could not do in this debate. Look as old and out of it as the right wing has been saying that he is. And it wasn't just the harsh whispered tone he had the entire time. Apparently he might have had a cold during this debate. The stuttering and forgetting what he was even trying to say. But he also could not respond at all to all of the lies being told by Donald Trump. And he was constantly being beaten to every point and being led around by Trump and the moderators.
Yeah.
And the video, if you've only listened to the audio, the video is even worse.
Oh my God, it's so much worse.
Because the entire time, Joe Biden just had an open mouth, slack-jawed, trying to catch flies stare into space, seemingly. I don't know if he knew where the camera was, if he was staring at the moderators. I don't know what he was looking at.
I don't know, man. So I didn't watch this live. You watched it live.
Yes, unfortunately.
I watched it much later, so I heard a lot of the buzz about it. I've heard clips from it. I didn't watch it until much later, and then I was flabbergasted at how bad he looked. Oh my God. And every time something even good happened for Joe Biden, it would cut to him and he would just look like he was just as surprised to hear that as everyone else was. I have an example where basically Jake Tapper started talking about the economy and how Trump's administration incurred twice the amount of debt that the Biden administration did. Great point. It was amazing. And Tapper's like, hey, try to worm your way out of this, Trump. Good luck. And then it just cuts to Biden with a 1,000-yard stare just going, Well, literally, Trump is trying to get owned right now by Jake Tapper. And Biden looks so confused by the whole situation. I'm like, what is happening? So, okay, fine. But how did Biden answer the questions? We're not going to go too crazy, but I do have two clips I wanted to show you guys. Here is Biden responding to Trump about the economy, which we just talked about. Good luck.
President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Yeah, it was painful. And Trump did capitalize on that. He said, you said you beat Medicare. You're right. You beat it into the ground. Which is like a Republican trying to own a Democrat on killing Medicare is ridiculous.
Oh, right.
But it worked because Joe Biden doesn't know what the hell he's saying anymore.
I know. Well, then even, I don't know if you could hear it at home, but like just a little... Just, oh my God. Okay, so not good. How about on his best issue we have for the entire election, abortion?
The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in. They talk about that, but here's the deal: there's a lot of young women are being raped by their in-laws, by their spouses, brothers and sisters, it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many young women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border.
Jason, if Trump made that type of pivot for the abortion answer, we would be all over that, calling him out on it.
Right. He forgot clearly what he was saying in the middle of a sentence and then moved to immigration.
Trump didn't make that good of a spin to immigration during the entire debate. I'm just, the spin of the night goes to Joe Biden. I can't, man. It was bad.
And I mean, kind of what we heard there too, it seemed to me, and I didn't go back and check and time anything, but it seemed like Biden had like half the time that Trump had. And I don't know if that was he just stopped early and didn't use up all his time.
I did hear that he definitely didn't use up all his time. Like there was a lot of time where he just used like half of his time. But even when he used it though, he just...
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess what else? What is it? He's probably better off not talking.
Well, and every time he just answered a question, well, you gotta do this, and then what about this, and then what about this, and then we talk about this, and some about this, and then we're gonna move on to this topic, then this topic, then this topic, and then this topic, and he just keeps going and just talks nothingness the entire time.
Well, and I mean, even so, the two clips that we had, he starts off by making
decent points,
reasonable points. You can still barely hear him because of his voice,
right?
But then he just loses it most of the way through, and he ends up losing. Instead of it being okay, you were making some good points, and say even if you flubbed something or didn't do well with the rest of it, a normal person you'd have been fine with that,
right?
But because he loses it in such a way that just makes him look like he has diminished mental capacity, the entire point is gone,
right?
Because it just plays into that narrative that he is not fit to be the president, and it's hard to argue with now.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't know what the moderators were even there for, because they did absolutely
nothing. They read the questions. They did their job and they went home. What did you want from them? They said, we're going to read the questions. We're not going to fact check anything. So good luck, everybody. And we are CNN.
And they even went against their own rules. We're not going to play the clip of it, but the only time when Joe Biden actually had some spunk in him the entire debate was when they were talking about golfing.
Yes.
And they were going back and forth, which was supposed to not be allowed.
Yeah, whatever happened to this whole like, hey,
muting microphones?
We're gonna mute the microphone because it's not your turn yet. Oh no, this is gold. We gotta make sure we play this. This is what America wants.
Yeah, they're trash talking each other's golf games. We have to listen to this. That they let go. Well, and if Joe Biden had just said, yeah, I know you're a really good golfer, that's all you did while you were president, and you charged millions of dollars to the taxpayers to have the Secret Service with you on your own privately owned golf course, and you profited from having them stay there. Yes, you're a great golfer. You're a much better golfer than I am.
No,
I'm a much better president than you are, and that's the job that I'm auditioning for right now.
Jason, go to the, was it Fort, whatever it was, and go help them with their debate prep, because apparently they don't understand that. Because I guess Biden's first instinct was, well, I have a 6 handicap now. Or no, sorry, back when I was, no, I thought it was like, no, he started with 6, and then Trump called him on it. And, well, maybe it was like an 8. I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why are you exaggerating your handicap?
Well, why are you even talking about golf?
Well, first off, but like, why are you're lying about something that's not even relevant to what we're talking about? Why? And this is what drives me nuts too. And I'm glad almost like Trump knew it, because again, the one thing Trump knows is golf. He also already knew like how BS having a 6 handicap was.
I don't have that kind of money. I don't golf.
Jason, I'll tell you this, man. Like, if I had a handicap, because I don't do any leagues or anything like that, it would probably be definitely, like, for sure, double digits. Like, having a 6 handicap is pretty dang good.
Yeah, I just don't care. I don't care who's better at golf. I don't care who is better at basketball.
Well, right.
Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. So, first off, it's dumb that we're even doing that.
Well, and then you left it up to Trump at the end of that.
I know.
He said we should stop acting like children. We're acting like children. Donald Trump said that to Joe Biden. And you talked about the fact checking. CNN did 0 fact checking during the debate. They had fact checking live on Twitter.
Oh, thank God.
And after the debate, they fact checked. And actually, I want to play. We'll show how many lies Donald Trump told during this debate. A 90-minute debate. He lied 30 times by their count. Take a listen.
He said some Democratic states allow people to execute babies after birth, an egregious lie that is illegal in every state. He said everybody, even Democrats, wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. Roe was supported by 2/3 of Americans, even more Democrats. He said every legal scholar wanted Roe overturned, abortion returned to the states. Legal scholars have told me directly this is not true. He said the U.S. currently has the biggest budget deficit ever. No, that happened under Trump in 2020. He said the U.S. currently has a record trade deficit with China. That also happened under Trump in 2018. He said Biden personally gets a lot of money from China. 0 evidence of this. He said there were no terror attacks during his presidency. In fact, there were multiple attacks. He said Iran didn't fund Hamas, Hezbollah, other terror groups under his presidency. Iran, in fact, did. He said Biden wants to quadruple people's taxes. That is pure fiction. He said the U.S. has provided way more aid to Ukraine than Europe had. It's actually the opposite. He said the U.S. has provided about $200 billion in Ukraine aid. It's closer to $110 billion. He said 18 or 19 million people have crossed the border under Biden. That is millions too high. He said many of these migrants are from prisons or mental institutions. His own campaign cannot corroborate this. He said Biden has only created jobs for illegal immigrants. Total nonsense. He said Nancy Pelosi turned down his offer of 10,000 National Guard troops on January 6th. There's no evidence she even got such an offer. It was the president, not Pelosi, who had the power to deploy the D.C. Guard. He said Pelosi now acknowledges she turned down the troops. No, her office tells me this claim is still a lie. He said he deployed the National Guard to Minneapolis in 2020. Actually, that was the Democratic governor. He spoke of, quote, ridiculous fraud in the 2020 election. 0 evidence of any widespread fraud. He said NATO was going out of business before he took office. Completely, clearly absurd. He said the U.S. was paying 100% of NATO before he came along. The U.S. made up about 71% of NATO defense spending, not 100. He said he, not Biden, is the one who lowered insulin prices in Medicare. He did it for some seniors, but Biden did it for far more. He said Biden indicted him. Again, no evidence Biden has had a personal role in any of these 4 prosecutions. He said Europe takes no U.S. cars. Just not true. He spoke of food prices quadrupling under Biden. That's a wild exaggeration, though they are up. He said Biden made up the idea he called dead service members suckers and losers. No, the Atlantic magazine reported that, and then former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly corroborated it. He said Biden called black people, quote, super predators for 10 years. Biden never once deployed that phrase, let alone for 10 years, though he did at least once speak of, quote, predators without specifying it was about black people. He said his Trump tax cut was the largest in U.S. history. Not true, though, in fairness, Biden also said this. Trump said China and others stopped buying from Iran under him. China never stopped stopped. He revived his pet lie. I don't know how many times I've done it, that he signed the Veterans Choice Program into law. Barack Obama did that in 2014. Trump signed an expanded version in 2018. And finally, Trump said Biden got rid of that Veterans Program. Biden has not done that.
It took him 3 minutes of talking as fast as he possibly could.
That was one heck of a mouthful. My goodness.
Just to refute all of the lies that Trump said during a 90-minute debate.
So, and that's a good segue to what I wanted to talk about as well. And we're kind of doing it ourselves, but I mean, this is the reality of the situation. I'm getting very tired of the double standard between Trump and Biden. Biden is getting as much flack as he is, as much panic as he's getting, and as much scrutiny as he's getting because he's a Democrat. 100%. We have seen time and time again that people just accept Trump for how he is. And like you just said, Trump was unhinged during that debate. 100% completely unhinged. He did not sound old, and that's it. But Trump's stuff was absolutely insane the entire debate, and media outlets are not talking about it because they have higher expectations for Joe Biden and Democrats. We've seen this before with the House and the Senate, where the House Republicans and Senate can act as insane as they want, and we just treat that as like, oh yeah, that's normal. Of course they always act that way. I am getting really tired of this double standard where stuff like this is going to horribly affect Joe Biden and Democrats, but no one's going to care about all the insane things that Trump said during that debate.
I don't think I'm quite as on the Biden apology tour.
I'm not on the apology. I'm saying I'm just sick of the idea that, because we've done this all the time, right? We've said this numerous times. What if Obama did what Trump did? And people just don't care what Republicans do in this country. They just do not care. But because Biden is a Democrat, and it would have been the same thing if it was somebody else on that stage too, where they would have gotten so much more scrutiny than Trump would have been.
Biden's performance made it so that it didn't matter what Trump did. That's how bad it was. All he literally had to do was just look like an average person that could handle the duties of being president, and we would be having a different conversation. The fact that he looked like someone who needs to retire now is the problem. Because yes, that negates everything else that happened. Unfortunately, any other person that would have been mildly competent in that situation would have been able to capitalize on all of the many problems that Trump had during that debate. Joe Biden didn't once score any points off of that.
I agree.
And that's the problem. You cannot have, if that's the way he looks during this debate, how's he going to look 2 years from now, 3 years from now? And that's what people are going to have in their mind when they go vote. They're not all as biased as we are, where you know what, if he doesn't drop out, that's fine. I'm still going to vote for him. But that's not the way the average non-political person that does not pay attention to this shit, but saw the video clips in this debate of Joe Biden multiple times forgetting what he was saying in the middle of a sentence and being absolutely lost on how to continue. They're not going to vote for him. And that's a problem.
I agree with that.
And to go with that, we're seeing polling where Biden is now down 2 to 3% following the debate. That is all the ground that he got from Trump being a convicted felon.
Yep.
Which is insane, that being a convicted felon is the same as a really bad debate performance. I don't think those two things should be weighed the same with the American public, but that's what happened. Biden gave away what we thought was going to give him this presidential win.
Yes, I completely agree.
And at this point, I don't see how he wins. And with what we just talked about, with the monarchistic powers that were just given to the president, we cannot risk that. We cannot lose this election to a wannabe dictator who will have the ability now to be a dictator when he takes office. The stakes are too high. We cannot have Grandpa Joe at 78 years old who just wants one more turn at the chair. I'm sorry, Grandpa, you can't drive to the store anymore. That's just the way it goes. And there have been widespread calls from donors, politicians. We had a representative from Texas call for Joe Biden, a Democrat, call for Joe Biden to step down, and the public, me included, for Joe Biden to withdraw from seeking a second term. With that in mind, who could possibly take over if somehow somebody convinces Joe Biden to step aside? Obviously, we have Gavin Newsom from California. Arizona is the governor there. Seems to be the next up, at least for 2028. We also have governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, Pennsylvania governor Josh Shapiro. I've seen Amy Klobuchar, a senator from Minnesota's name floated out there. And then the obvious one, Vice President Kamala Harris. She would be the only one that would be able to immediately take over the funding that they have gathered because she's already on the ticket. And I think for most people, it would be an insult if she was passed over and the nomination went to anyone else in Joe Biden's absence. That being said, do I think Joe Biden is going to step aside? I would say maybe a 40% chance. Will he personally agree to it? 30%, but could he be talked into it? I would go a little higher. Jill Biden apparently is a big problem there where, she thinks just like Joe Biden apparently does that he is the only one that can defeat Donald Trump.
So I have very conflicted feelings about this. I don't think as of right now, I'm calling for Joe Biden to stand down. And before people are like, what the hell is wrong with you? It's not because I think Joe Biden should stay in the race. I gotta be very clear about that. I don't want him in it either.
Well, I didn't want him in it 4 years ago.
Right. We were very clear on that too. But my honest thought right now is that it's too late. I think if we had the chance to do it, it would have been before the primaries. And no one took it. And Joe Biden was very headstrong about it and decided that he was going to stay in the race no matter what. Mostly because he did not trust giving the reins to Kamala Harris. With that said, I think there are some concerns that should be known of as well. I don't know how this would actually play out well that would actually help Democrats. I completely agree that I am highly skeptical of a path for victory for Joe Biden. It's still there. I'm not going to pretend that it's very likely, but it's still there. Just from what I know from general research on polarized attitudes and whatnot, Joe Biden can still win with, I think, the path that we talked about before, which is like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And I think that one Nevada district. That's still doable. Georgia's gone. I don't think Georgia would ever go back for Joe Biden again. However, I think the complete uncertainty of what's going on and the absolute chaos, because we know how Democrats can be when things are uncertain and chaotic, I think that's going to be a complete circus. And we already kind of saw how we made fun of Republicans when they couldn't find a speaker. I think that's going to be that times 100 for us, with very little time left. If it's going to be anybody, I also believe it has to be Kamala Harris from a logistical standpoint. I do not foresee anybody getting enough funds. I mean, even Kamala Harris, I'd have to check into that.
She inherits the funds that they currently have.
If he resigns, I believe.
He just has to not run. He just has to suspend his campaign. And she would inherit the campaign fund.
Are we sure? Because I think she would have to. Okay. So I thought she would have to do her own committee.
I'm sure there's more to it than that. But she is the only one without a lot of hurdles that can just inherit the funds.
Okay. So, well, then even then.
Because she's already a member of his current ticket.
Sure. Okay. So I think that bolsters the argument that it would have to be Kamala Harris.
And I believe so as well.
Right. There's just no way around it. I mean, lots of people are throwing around Gretchen Whitmer, and that's great. For the record, Gretchen Whitmer also has vehemently opposed publicly the idea. I think she said on Twitter, if anyone thinks that I would go against Joe Biden or I would lose faith in Joe Biden or something like that, or thinks that Joe Biden could lose.
Well, he has to step aside.
Well, yeah, but it was some, I'm badly paraphrasing, but it was basically saying she said something like, if anyone thinks Joe Biden is going to lose Michigan, they're full of shit or something like that. She fully stood behind Joe Biden, behind closed doors and in public as well. So she's out.
Well, I'm sorry to say, I think he's going to lose Michigan.
Well, I mean, I do too, but...
Well, I mean, honestly, he loses the presidency then. Without Georgia, without Michigan, he's done.
Well, and that's what I said. I don't
care at this point. After this performance...
just throw anything against the wall, just hope for the best kind of at this point. Is that kind of what we're...
Well, I think Kamala Harris will do better.
I think so too. The other concern is, how does it happen? People are concerned about, does Joe Biden get involved if that's the case? I'm of the crowd of if he gets involved. This is just how I think it would be pictured. I have a very ignorant and naive standpoint on this, so keep that in mind, please.
He has to support. He has to be a cheerleader.
Well, people don't want that. That's the thing.
Well, I mean, not necessarily go on the campaign trail, but he has to endorse
No, that's what I'm saying. They specifically do not want him to do that.
No, I think he would have to.
And I agree with you. I think to maintain as much order as possible, Joe Biden would have to say, all right, I'm not going to run. I'm going to let Kamala Harris take over, and I trust her.
Just say, her. It's become very clear. I think I'm up for it, but the American people don't. And this election is too grave a stakes for all the things that we talked about here today. And I am willing, for the good of the country, to step aside. I think I can handle it. I think I would be good for another term, but it's too important, and the people aren't on my side on this. So again, for the good of the country, I'm going to step aside and let my very capable Vice President Kamala Harris take over. I endorse her completely, and together we still have to beat Donald Trump.
Right.
That's all that would need to happen.
And then I think from there on, it would have to be Kamala has to win something at the convention. And people are kind of figuring out, and again, I don't know either, but the only thing I can think that would be remotely close to okay would be some kind of primary election among the delegates.
Well, they would have to. I mean, you still have to have that process.
Right, but like some people are saying they're just handing off. Some people are saying, like, do you have extra primaries? Because even then,
no,
like,
I don't think you do.
Because even then with what I said, it was like, you're kind of subverting the will of the voters, and then like, hey, I voted for this guy,
they
and now
voted for
Joe
Biden Harris.
Right.
So to me, that's
close
still
enough.
Yeah. And there is one issue here in that Ohio has an August 7th deadline for certifying their ballot, but the convention is scheduled on August 19th.
Yep.
They had previously said that they'd get around that deadline by having a virtual roll call, much like they did in 2020 during the pandemic.
Yep.
Via video conference and declare a nominee ahead of the convention, but I don't see how you do that now.
Right, exactly. So that's my concern. I'm concerned, and this is why I think I don't know, man. I don't think Biden should step down. I don't think he is anyway, but I don't think he should, even though I don't really see a likely path forward to victory. I don't see how we get our shit together in this short amount of time. That's not going to completely implode upon itself and piss everyone off, and then let the Republicans just laugh at us for 4 months while they just trounce us in the election. But again, I 100% completely get where you're coming from, and I
think it's going to happen like that if we keep Joe Biden in.
Right. I don't disagree with that. And again, that's my concern. I don't disagree with that either.
What I want to see happen is for exactly what I said, for Joe Biden to step aside, for the nomination to go to Kamala Harris, for her to pick a running mate and not Joe Biden, and to go forward with that ticket. And I do have confidence. I mean, the bar is very low. Running against Donald Trump with everything else that we've said, the fact that he is a criminal, and she was a prosecutor, so maybe that'll help. She would be able to capitalize on everything that happened during the debate. The fact that he just lies constantly, that's what she's good at.
I agree.
And all of their campaign has been focused on old Joe Biden, out of touch Joe Biden, corrupt Biden crime family. They lose all of that in an instant if Joe Biden is not the nominee. Whereas everything that's been said about Trump up to this point still pertains. And then who better to talk about abortion and how big of an issue that is and how it affects women's lives than Kamala Harris? I think she's much better equipped than Joe Biden, obviously more so than what we just heard during the clip when they were trying to talk about abortion on the debate and how badly Biden screwed that up. She also doesn't have quite the same love for Israel that Joe Biden has, and at least allegedly does not support their war in Gaza quite as enthusiastically as Joe Biden, and that will certainly help, and will help definitely in Michigan. And with the voters that Joe Biden has been losing, Kamala Harris is a half-black, half-Indian woman. That kind of solidifies a lot of the vote that Joe Biden has been losing, being a 125-year-old white mummy.
It's not because the bandages around his face.
I mean, we could possibly have the first female president. I think we're well overdue for that, and I'll always be on board with that. Kamala Harris isn't my favorite candidate. None of these people that we listed really are, but they're all better than Joe Biden. They were all better than Joe Biden 4 years ago. So I don't believe we should just keep putting the Crypt Keeper out there and see what happens. Hopefully his performance is more like the State of the Union than it it was the first debate. I don't want to roll those dice, because this happens again anywhere, at a rally, at another one of the debates, and we're cooked.
Let's talk about that, because there's also been more reporting about how his campaign and team does not let him do anything now that's not via teleprompter. I don't know if you've heard any of that, but
and there's a lot of stories that have come out, and people saying, yeah, after 4:00 he's really a different person. I don't know how much of that I believe.
Right, but the idea that we're hearing stories talk about how in private Democratic fundraisers, and these are completely small private events, they're putting on a teleprompter, that concerns me.
Yeah, if that's the case, then it's over. He should have never been put in this position in the first place.
I mean, I agree with that. And it makes you feel any better. It won't, by the way. A lot of those questions are probably already moot anyway, because as of yesterday, Biden and his campaign did announce that he is officially still running, and they're not doing anything to change that. I even got an email that I put up
for now
saying that he said, so let me be clear, as I say this as simply as I can. I'm running. I'm the Democratic Party's nominee. No one is pushing me out. I'm not leaving. I'm in this race to the end, and we are going to win.
Well, that's what he has to say.
Well, of course that's what he has to say, but I think it's more so, I think it's more so of an indicator of how stubborn he's going to be.
Well, yeah, clearly.
Than anything else.
It's going to take Jill Biden telling him he shouldn't run.
Right.
Now, okay, I told you what I wanted to see happen. What do I think will happen? I think he will stay in the race, and he will lose.
I'm about 95% sure he'll stay in the race.
I said I was probably 60% that he'll stay, because what it really boils down to is fundraising. And there are a lot of major donors right now that are freaking out.
Yep.
And that is a big deal. It's unfortunately, thanks again to our Supreme Court, a much larger deal when money is scared than when the general public is scared.
Correct.
And right now, the money is scared. And if they can't do anything to dissuade that, and if there is anything else that happens publicly with Joe Biden where he looks this bad, I don't care if he wants to stay in or not, he's not going to be staying in.
So here's potentially some good news if he stays in. What still baffles me, which we actually never talked about yet, I think we talked about before when they announced the dates of the debates, is that this is so damn early. It's not like it's going to make much change, but we've seen how literally a couple months can do to a voter's memory. I think this would end up getting pigeonholed, and just everyone forgets about this mostly, and we'll go back to...
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If he can turn around, if this is just like some weird one-off, like maybe they gave him some cold medicine and it messed him up, I don't know. If someone is in position to know this, though.
Right.
And if it's not it, and this is what we can expect going forward, then Donald Trump is going to be the president in November.
Correct. And it just, I don't know. It concerns me that we even have to have this discussion to begin with. Because like I said, I think my big concern or anything else is that this is just, it's too late. We should have had this discussion. I mean, we did, and everyone did back in January. And Biden assured everybody, and his campaign assured everybody, and all the people that said he's sharp and he's quick-witted still like he used to be, assured everybody he was going to stay with it. And this is where it got us.
If they really wanted to try to save some dignity, they could fake a medical scare. Maybe once Hunter gets convicted, that can be the turnaround. But there are a lot of ways if he's afraid of looking bad here.
But even then, it never goes well when you BS your own team. It never goes well when you BS your own team. And we've seen that actually play out on the Republican side, and how much chaos has been going on that side because of that. It never goes well when you BS your own team and try to say, hey, you should just be okay with this because reasons.
No, because Joe Biden is dead.
Right.
And we've been weekend at burning him for so long now, people can see the strings. It's not no reason. It's not, oh, we don't like Joe Biden. It's Joe Biden is not fit to run for another term. Like, maybe he's got enough gas in the tank to get him into January and he can finish out his first term. I'm not saying resign as president, but there's no way he makes it another 4 years. And that's what we're talking about.
And that's what people can comprehend. They can't comprehend Israel-Palestinian foreign policy. They can't comprehend Russia-Ukraine. They can hardly even comprehend the economy. What they can comprehend is that they see somebody and immediately evaluate them as, this guy is not up for the job.
Yeah, it's time to take grandpa's driver's license away.
Basically.
And that's where we're at as a nation.
Ugh.
This is the most I think we've ever disagreed on this podcast.
And I don't even know if we're even disagreeing that much either.
Well, you think it's too late to replace him and that it's going to hurt just as much as it helps. And I don't. I think anybody, you'd get a lot of energy. A lot of times campaigns aren't decided by this point anyway, or elections aren't decided by
like
this
primaries,
point.
at least, yeah.
So I don't think it's that bad. I think you'd inject a lot of energy. No one's gonna care. Like, oh, well, Joe Biden went through whatever 10 months saying that he was gonna be the nominee and now he's not. Yeah, because you saw that debate performance, right? He's not gonna make it 4 years. And now we finally all realize that, so we got, his vice president is gonna run. I don't see that as that big of a deal. I know that he has to step aside, and that's the one hurdle that I see, and I know he's not going to want to do it. I know how stubborn he is.
Yeah.
I know how he thinks he is the savior of the world. I know that. So that's why I say 40% chance it should happen, though. In my mind, we would all be better off if he were to step aside and we have Kamala Harris. And again, I'm not like not a K-Hive Kamala backer, but she's going to do a better job because she at least looks like she's a lot, which right now is the bar.
God, this whole situation just pisses me off. He needed to do 90 minutes.
Well, how many people around him, if this is the case and this is the way he's been, how did they think this was going to remain a secret?
Right.
That's what I don't get. If this was really how it is, there's a lot of people who are responsible for this. And if Donald Trump becomes the next president...
Well, and you said it before, it was when they announced midway through the debate that he had a cold.
Right.
They hoped for the best for that too, right? Like
if that's even true, there's a lot of speculation about that.
Sure.
It sure sounded like he might.
Well, sure, but I'm saying like just in general, even if it's complete BS, I don't even care. Let's say he just wasn't feeling well and that his team was just kind of hoping for the best first. That's the thing. Like they were just kind of like, let's put him out there and let's see what happens.
Right. I mean, you have to at least have mock debates leading up to this.
I would hope so.
And if that's the way he was...
I mean, someone should have probably told him he's going to be on camera.
And like maybe show him where the cameras are. That would have probably been nice, since he never looked into one the entire debate.
Well, and this is also something where we've talked about this before, where there's so much deceptive editing with Biden videos that make him look so much worse than what he actually can be. And that also really irks me because people are just parroting it and sharing
now
it.
It plays into this. Whereas, before you could say like, no, he's clearly walking over to this person.
Yes.
He's clearly walking here.
Yes.
He's talking to this person that you just cut right before he gets there, so it looks like he's just wandering away.
Yes.
But with this debate performance,
there wasn't anything. It was just live TV, man.
And it makes it look like, yep, all of that stuff was real, because he clearly doesn't know where he is.
Right. Yeah. You feeling patriotic yet? Oh, this is going to be one hell of a second half of the year. That's all I can say.
So, but if he's still there, that's fine. I'll still vote for him.
Yeah, and we'll tell you to still vote for him.
Because it's better than Trump.
Yep.
But how did we get here? There will be books written and movies made about how we got to this particular position.
Leave it. We picked the wrong team. That's all I got to say, man. Republicans have it so much freaking easier. Leave it to freaking Democrats to have run against the most unpopular candidate of all time in Donald Trump. And he somehow got way worse than the first time he ran for president. Then got convicted as a felon and also had a huge scandal with having an affair with a porn star on top
while he was married.
On top of all their stuff where he can no longer do business in New York and everything else.
Can no longer run a charity.
And we're still losing. Leave it to Democrats. God, it makes me so mad, man. It makes me mad and terrified. At least I got married.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next week.
I'm going to be honest, man. I didn't know how it was going to end it either. See you next week where we talk about something else equally depressing. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
Boop, boop, boop. Mic still works.
Hello. Mine too.